I'm Simran Singh. I'm the founding publisher of 1111 Magazine, host of 1111 Talk Radio, author of Conversations with the Universe, and Your Journey to Enlightenment. And I welcome you. The divine in me, as me, honors and welcomes the divine in you, as me. Conversations with the universe are happening all the time. Within the stillness in your heart, messages will appear. Symbols, numbers, and intuitions serve as one. A divine spark will touch the strings deep inside your heart. We are one, not just ships passing in the night. We are one. Different shapes, different faces, different colors, but all divine, each and every one. Conversations with the universe reveal your sacred path. In this higher love, you'll see the signs that guide your way back home, directing you, guiding you where natural order reigns. A divine plan unfolds in grace as you ourselves. What if there's only one here, and it is you? You here for your own self-realization. What if every religion on the planet is simply a ladder, a construct, all leading to the same place, all meeting in celebration as one, all coming together as the divine sacred puzzle, each one of us a piece. Conversations with the universe, the language of the soul. It's time to connect the dots, see how the world seems to be creative, intuitive, and powerful you'll become. Find that inner voice and then you'll see how the magic fills the air. We are one, not just ships passing in the night. We are one, not just rainbows in the dark. We are one. Everything's a message. There's a lot to clean up in this world. It's all spilling out everywhere. Embrace the message. It's time to come back home in the light of a brand new day. The illusion is undone. Many voices, many hearts. We are children of the sun in celebration, radiating everywhere. Our essence is reclaimed. We are one, not just ships passing in the night. We are one, not just rainbows in the dark. We are one on this rebel road we're on. We are one. A year and a half ago, I was guided to go on the road with my two kids in an RV. I was guided to be my unknown self and live a life without any plan, without any control, simply being led and guided by my heart. Following only the signs and symbols that showed up, landing in only the places that invited me. I was to be the creative rebel, someone that understood very clearly that despite what's on TV, despite what's on the newspapers, despite what's going on out there is nothing that really needs to be saved, fixed, or healed, because we are all whole. We are all the divine walking individuations of the divine presence. I was to be the creative rebel. It's very easy to step out there and be that creative rebel in front of people and inspire people, and then have them go home inspired. But how do I make them hang on to it? How do I allow them to know that they are that as well? I started to realize the best way to do that is to allow them to understand there's lots of creative rebels. There are a lot of people out there doing what they're here to do, living their heart's passion, serving in the world in tremendous ways. And so I was inspired along the way to create these panel discussions where we went into deep topics, where we talked to people in different communities that are really being pillars, that are willing to step out on courage and leaps of faith and say what they need to say, be who they need to be, and act in the ways that they feel called to act. So I am honored and grateful, number one, that you would be here in the presence of us, in our living room right now, being a part of this, as we celebrate humanity and life for all it is, in its distortion and its life. And I'm deeply honored to be with this amazing group of people that have come together to share their wisdom, to share their light, and to be in conversation, conscious conversation together, to talk about different topics that sometimes are not so comfortable. So I'd like to introduce who's on my panel. Linda Allen was born in a family of disciples of Christ Minister, civil rights activists in Louisiana and Arkansas in the 1960s, which had a large impact on the direction of her future life. With a bachelor's degree in sociology at Tulane University and 1 year of a PhD program at Harvard University in the same field, her area of interest is in the sociology of knowledge, the social factors influencing what people think as of knowledge and truth, including bodies of knowledge such as religion, science, and political ideologies. She worked for several years in anti-racist political activism and education. For the last 5 years, Buddhism has been her predominant religious practice, with an emphasis on Tibetan Buddhism. Her other great interest is nurturing and healing animals. Linda earns her living working at a small law firm in Slidell, Louisiana. My next guest is Faya Olufumilayo Bashful. Please say your name for me.
It's Faya Olufumilayo Bashful.
Thank you. A native New Orlean, trained as a dancer and lived in New York City, she returned home in 2002 and began her search for universal truth. Her healing journey has evolved from Southern Baptist to universal laws and spiritual principles while embracing traditional African spirituality. Transformation is a process. My third guest is Kelvin Galatas, and he has an MA in Theology and Religions from Loyola University. The focus of his studies was the mystical tradition in the world's many seemingly disparate religions. Unable to reconcile himself to the Methodist Church at age 12, he was called to seek the truth in his own way. He later was ordained as a minister and chaplain. He's raised 3 children as a single father. He currently serves as a family readiness officer for the 4th Marine Aircraft Wing, serving the families of 7,000 Marines. He served as an instructor of world religions at Loyola University, and as a graduate of LSU Law School, he also practiced maritime and admiralty law. He has delivered sermons in the NSUUS pulpit. My next guest is Tuck Sell. She is a Rebel Roadie on the Rebel Road with me, giving herself in complete service, expecting nothing in return. She states, I am the Southern voice for bold self-expression on this Rebel Road caravan. My 60 years of life have been lived pleasing others, sometimes at the expense of my own happiness. My journey has been one of finding my voice, claiming my freedom on my terms. I'm saying yes with absolute joy and ecstasy of embracing uncertainty, like my long-lost lover. Don't we all need to do that? Tuck Self is a proclaimed personal growth enthusiast with a passion for squeezing as much juice and joy out of this journey as she can. As a Southern woman, she was raised to do what is appropriate and to make everyone around her as comfortable as possible, even at the expense of her own happiness. Her journey has been one of finding and reclaiming her voice and boldly expressing that to the world. Having found and reclaimed her voice, Tuck now shares revolutionary tools with women to help them find their voice, live without fear on their own terms. She's a trained life development coach in communication and listening, certified natural law coach, quantum success coach, fitness and intuitive eating coach, and a human design specialist and consultant. My next guest is Reverend Angela Davis. She serves as a unity minister for Covington and New Orleans and is a professional storyteller and world traveler. She has experienced great wonder and many metaphors from stepping into the new year with a broken foot. I have more to talk about Reverend Angela. She is a minister at Unity North Shore, and she
leads a startup Science of Mind group in the greater New Orleans area. She's been involved in both for 30 years and has facilitated workshops using the books Women Who Run with the Wolves, The Artist's Way, and You Can Heal Your Life. She writes a weekly uplift column every Friday, and as a professional storyteller, she spins tales of myths, folklore, fables, drama, and legends. Well, doesn't that sound like life? As an entertainer and recording artist, she offers a variety of stories guaranteed to nurture the hearts and minds of children of all ages. My next guest is Bishop E. Renee Soule, the community-centered bishop. Renee's messages of togetherness, faith, and communal responsibility have been a driving force in the growth and continuity of dozens of communities across the nation. His passion for community fueled his 2006 relocation from the Washington, D.C. area to New Orleans, Louisiana, where he led a Katrina rebuilding project. He is a leader in the causes of social transformation and social justice advocacy for underserved youth and communities. He's married to Doris Marie Washington of Alexandria, Virginia, and they have 4 children. And he now leads the City of Refuge Worship Center in Slidell, a spirit-led, spirit-fed Christ-centered ministry. He is the executive director of the North Shore Black Elected Officials Coalition. And last but not least, Patricia Stout, founder of the Women's Center for Healing and Transformation, is a holistic social worker dedicated to emotional intelligence and consciousness raising with individuals, groups, and communities. Postgraduate training includes certification with the Psychia Institute of Wellbeing for Psycho-Spiritual Integration and Breathwork Journeys. It is her dream to create loving community, to deepen women's spiritual and personal growth, and thereby to co-create more harmony among peoples with Mother Earth. She is a Unitarian Universalist and studies with Thich Nhat Hanh. So I'd like you to give a short round of applause to my wonderful. We will pass the mic as we go to get the responses so that you can hear exactly what we want to discuss today. I was invited here to discuss several things, and one of those things happened to be race relations, and that is an issue that still exists, surprisingly, in our world. There's still this issue of separation when it comes to color, not even just color, when it comes to economic status, social status, when it comes to all kinds of things that are really just part of this illusion. So what we'd like to do today is speak to that, speak to what the cause of that could be, because it's never what the surface looks like. It's always something more emotional, it's always something more spiritual that causes every dis-ease that is on the planet. So as we begin, I'd love to hear each one of you speak to where you think these issues of race or unworthiness or lack or even fighting occurs. How does that stem? Where does that stem from, do you believe, in the communities or within a person?
Well, I have enjoyed hearing Joseph Campbell talk about the myth dying of us versus them, but whenever anything dies, it gets the death throes and it grabs at our ankles. And I think sometimes as we come together, seeing the picture of Earth from space, having every culture available at the same time on a New York subway, that myth of us and them is in its death throes, and it's becoming worse before it gets better. But I have deep hopes that we can embrace all of humanity within ourselves and stop projecting it onto each other and stop that fighting.
Beautiful, thank you.
I believe race is a problem in America today. I believe it's a problem because society has forced us to look at the external instead of the internal. We are all created equal. Below our surface, below our earth suit, we all are made up of the same thing, and our worth is not in our external being. For whatever reason, the God that I serve chose me to be a black man, and I'm happy about that because he liked that. And I think he did a good job. And for whatever reason, he chose you to be who you are, and you ought to be happy about that. And I think if we can learn to be happy about who we are internally and not focus on who we are externally, we can help this country we call America and other nations deal with race issues.
Now that's some good God's
Before I broke my foot, I didn't know anything about being handicapped. But I can tell you now I know a whole lot about being handicapped. And what I've discovered is that when you take on a role, this is a temporary role, but how many people actually have to live with being handicapped for the rest of their lives?
Wow.
I have learned what it is like to be handicapped at that level where people are responding to me in such a way I never fathomed. And I can tell you that when I stop being handicapped, I will begin to treat others in the way that they deserve to be treated, handicapped or not. Now, I'm sure I was doing all that before, but I'm more aware of it now. And so I just invite and encourage all of you to just put on the mantle of being a different race. Because race is not just a problem here in the United States, it's a worldwide problem. I've been to so many countries, and in those countries, it's always the same issue. It's always pointing the finger at the other person and making them little. And really and truly, someone once said that 3 fingers are pointing back at us when we're pointing. And so we're really focusing and projecting outward what's going on inside. And one last point I want to make is, I grew up here in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I've dealt with race all my life, and I want to tell you how I dealt with it. I ignored it. You know why? Because you just don't give it any voice. Not because you can't handle the problems as a group. I mean, we will get to the place where it will be handled. But until everybody can see it from their own point of view and are living it and experiencing it and expressing it, things will shift. And we have lots of mixed races, families get together. I think it's beautiful. It's only a matter of time before it disappears.
Life's so full of shit. It's awesome.
It was hard not to do that when we talked. I kind of focused in on the unworthy when you said the unworthy. For me, everything comes back to listening. And I'm a trained coach in listening and communication by a beautiful, beautiful African-American woman who did studies while she was working in San Quentin. And she was counseling the inmates on death row. And she asked every inmate, what was it that had you commit this heinous crime? And she said every person that responded to her said that in the moment of the demise of the person that they were killing, they felt heard. And so what feels really correct for me is listening. I'm so excited that you worked with Katrina Evacuees, because I had the chance to do that a couple of years ago. And while the focus was on rehab and putting them in homes and getting them in jobs, and it was just this focused thing that had to be done, what I felt like our group did was we listened. We just listened. The people wanted to be heard. They had been ripped from every facet of life that was comfortable for them, picked up and moved into South Carolina, into Columbia, South Carolina, which had to be horrific. But it was the most healing thing I think I ever participated in. So it comes back to listening for me, listening to myself, listening to someone else, because I think the one thing we all want in the world is to be heard.
Thank you, Sam.
Hi. I'd like to approach this from the perspective of world religions.
Kevin, could you hold the mic, please?
and,
the video.
And Christianity, which might not be two different perspectives. At the core of all world religions, the path to God is basically selflessness and non-attachment. That's how we achieve oneness with the real. Non-attachment means non-attachment to everything. That includes our identities. Our identities as male, female, black, white. And it's because of these identities that we cling to is the cause, for me, of the division of the races. And if I let go of my identity as a race, as a gender, as a political belief, even as a religious belief, then everyone is my brother and sister, are they not? So that's from the perspective of the world's religions. From the perspective of Christianity, what we're taught by the Apostle Paul is that we're all called to be sons and daughters of God. And in that, we are all equal. So Paul says that being called to the heirship of Christ We are heirs like Christ, and we are brothers and sisters as sons of God. So all of these are my brothers and sisters. And wouldn't it be great if every religion followed their own tenets? We would not have any violence, war, racism. But in the meantime, it's for those of us that are up here to preach within our own religions to make it better. And hopefully we can all see each other without reference to color, gender, belief.
Thank you, Kevin.
To sum it up in a word, I would say acceptance. And so as an individual, when I accept that in this body, I'm an African American woman, in that acceptance, I'm accepting how that's viewed positively. I'm accepting how it's viewed negatively. I'm accepting my own view. And I think that, you know, in my journey, even presently, dealing with thoughts that I have, like there are days that I'm walking through the city and I'm good, and I see people that look different and I'm fine and there's no triggers, and I get home and I do what I need to do and I'm happy. And then there are days when I'm like, this New Orleans I don't like, and I'm mad at everybody, and any license plate I see that doesn't say New Orleans, I want you out. So, you know, for me it's, yes, there's racism, because these are things that we've created. We've created these constructs with thoughts and beliefs that are fueled. There's a lot of heat. You don't have to tell a baby. Wait till they get to school and they come home and say something. They've learned it. So I think in acceptance of owning my thoughts, what is it I think and feel in the moment, even if it's ugly, even if it's something that I can barely accept in myself. When I can accept it in myself, that ugly thought, that go home Chicago, go home New York, all those little things I can get really hot about and say, well, you know, I went to New York for 17 years and nobody sent me home. And then getting into that oneness of people come and go, there's no rules. We can actually go to different states and I don't own the state. And, you know, and deal with myself. If everyone had a level of acceptance to just deal with what you think and feel honestly. I don't like so-and-so people. Just be honest about it. We won't stay there. None of us will, because we all have guidance. We won't sit in that. But I think it's the fear of acceptance, that fear of just being honest, that we have likes and dislikes, and they're real.
Beautiful, thank you.
I think racism is a truly real problem. At least it has been in my life. When I was a small child, the first 13 years of my life were dominated by the civil rights movement. And the pain that I endured as a white child, watching my society partially self-destruct over these issues is something I'm not over with yet. Every now and then I have to remind myself that that was the past, that was the 1960s. And then something happens, like when I was substitute teaching the week before the presidential election of 2008, and I got to see the children of today responding to each other in terms of race. In Slidell, Louisiana, where I was substitute teaching, there was no question that there was huge feelings of political opposition, and it split along racial lines. So it's not just back in the 60s. I saw it vividly, evidently, living and breathing in the Slidell Public Schools. I think the root of it is fear. My fear, your fear, everybody's fear. So the way that I work on it, first of all, is to come to understand my own fear, my own anger. Until I do that, I really don't have anything to offer to anybody else as a solution. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm going to keep that for a second because I'm going to start back with you. Everything that happens has an emotional and a spiritual cause. And if one of the basis of all of these issues, whether it's race or any problem that exists on the planet right now, is actually fear, then we must pour the opposite on that, which is love. We must do that. But it seems like the biggest issue is self-love. Are we really engaging in self-love? And what does that look like? What does that feel like? Because I think you can speak to a lot of people and they'll say, I love myself. I love myself. But if we truly loved ourselves, would these mirrors show up outside of us? Would these projections be occurring? Can you speak, each one of you, to self-love? What needs to happen for each race to begin loving themselves enough that we don't continue to pass on the negative thoughts or beliefs or the generational influences that have continued to keep this energy moving forward when it really no longer needs to be here? What has to happen in terms of the self-love in our own bodies, our homes, our communities, for each one of us to be the change that we wish to see?
I've struggled with lack of self-love my entire life. I can trace it to my childhood by seeing people fight all the time, and oftentimes killing each other. I think that in the most recent 5 years on my new spiritual path that I'm following, which is Tibetan Buddhism, I am finally learning for me what that's about. And I would want to say that I think that's possible in any spiritual tradition. It's just, for me, it occurred through the path of Buddhism in my 50s. It's not easy. For some reason, as a kid, I did not learn compassion, even though as a minister's daughter, compassion was not real. It was not alive to me. I spent my life in fear. Fear could be triggered into aggression. And all that I could quickly turn on myself. When I saw other people didn't like being treated that way, I could easily turn it on myself, and have done for decades. So I'm a novice at self-love, and it's got to do with accepting that I'm a human being, that I understand hate. Not only do other people hate, I hate too. And I have to delve into the nature, the deep nature of my own hate before I can understand someone else's. So I'll leave it at that and pass it on to the next person.
Thank you, Linda. I want to express that sometimes the power of just saying I don't know how, to be that intimate and vulnerable and open about where you are. I think we are here to be examples to one another. And one of the biggest examples we can be is letting ourselves be that open so that others feel comfortable enough to be open to share their woundedness or share their brokenness or share their lack of knowing how, so that we each move forward together hand in hand. Thank you.
It's a big question. I'm actually have been given a class to do called The Love Zone, which is all about self-love. 8 weeks to self-love. And I'm like, it's all about me, really. So whoever joins me will be doing what I'm doing to love myself more in 8 weeks. So I think that the meat and potatoes for me is a skill that I learned in school. I'm a student at Innovations Institute for Spiritual Development, and it's dealing with the inner children. And they aren't, I'm 49, they are still alive and very present. And some days more present than I would like them to be. And so when I deal with these memories or that statement, for example, you used to be a genius, now you're just stupid. So, those recordings of that statement when I'm trying to do a new project and I'm trying to stretch myself, or I'm putting myself in a position that I'm terrified about, and I hear that, I've got to get in that. Okay, well, why was it said? Did your dad really mean it? No. How do you really feel about yourself? I've got to work with all those emotions, or I won't do it. I'll self-sabotage. I'll forget who I really am, and I'll act like I used to be a genius, but now I'm stupid. And so that for me is the power to really go into that as an adult, to go back to that little kid and to feel that terror and to feel that disappointment and that hurt, and to let her cry or write, or sometimes I'll just dance, put music on and just go off, but to get that energy out. So it's not a present sore, that sore is healing, that mental wound is healing, where, no, that's not true about me. I don't know that I was a genius, but I'm definitely not stupid. And what am I? And then doing an I am statement or doing some sort of affirmation, but it's deep work.
Yeah.
I don't always enjoy it, but I do want the consequence. I want the deeper love, but I don't always enjoy going in and dealing with that hurt.
It's an inside job.
There is absolutely no question that most of the problems of this world arise from a sense of lack. Lack of something that you think you need. Primarily, among those is lack of love. Now, your question threw me for a loop because as a mystic spiritualist, I'm all about denial of the self. And you asked me about self-love. So let's see how we can reconcile it.
You are welcome to deny the little s self. I'm talking about the big S self.
Okay. I think I know where we're going with this.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think you're talking not about the small self, our identities, which is always grasping, that need for love, which makes us do stupid things out of desperation in our lives. How many people have been there?
But can we love that too? Can we love that too?
We can accept that, but this is where I'm going with this, is to reconcile your question with my beliefs. There is a higher self. That higher self is found by becoming selfless, by non-attachment, by non-grasping. The Buddhists call it nirvana. Every major religion has a place where we go in our quiet, which is infinite knowledge, infinite bliss, infinite joy. If we can quiet ourselves and go to that place, that is where we learn the love of the universe for Christians, the love of the Father, who Jesus taught about. If through spirituality, religion, whatever you want to call it, if we can teach our children, even ourselves as adults, to go to that place, we will learn that we are loved. We don't need it from outside. And so we learn that we are loved ourselves. We don't have to get it from other people. We don't need the approval of other people. And the love that comes from the universe, from God the Father, is so overwhelming that when it fills you up, you can't help but overflow with it. And then we all become apostles, and we are able to help those who don't know that love. And I think that's really our mission here.
Thank you, Kevin.
This just feels so weird. Self-love. First thing I thought of when you asked that question is, my name is Tuck Self. And I was born Tuck Self. I got married, and I was married for a little while, so I was Tuck Davis. But when I came back to my name, it just feels so correct that my name is Tuck Self. And I am so clear that I have come to this planet to find, to discover, and to give myself full permission to be my authentic self. I think authenticity is the word that comes up for me around self-love. And it's no mistake, I'm sure, that I planted myself in this very small little southern town that was all about how we looked and who our friends were, and it was a very social type of place. And I did everything, I really did everything that I was supposed to do so that I could be loved by everybody outside of me, so that I could be safe. And so this journey of mine back to myself, to my authentic self, to the true Tuck Self, feels like a journey of self-love. And I am so excited to be on this panel. I think, how much more could I love myself than me? With these luminaries, y'all are just brilliant.
How many of you have ever lost something?
Absolutely.
All the time, right?
Yes.
Well, when I lose things, I spend a long time, an inordinate amount of time looking for it. And then I get to the place where I'm so tired of looking for it, I say, okay, God, can you help me find it? And then I find it a few seconds later. Self-love is like that. It's like forgetting who you are. And so when you remember who you are, it's just a matter of saying, okay, God, teach me who I am. Help me get this. I've seen people all my life. I've seen people die not getting that self-love. And I subscribe to the belief that Well, you see, we're all like God. And we come to this planet to play around, to mess up, to play. This is the playground of life. This is where you're playing with your life. And you make all of these stupid mistakes, no matter how much you tell yourself, I'm not going to do it that way, right? And then you do it exactly the way you said you weren't going to do it. Because you were supposed to. You're supposed to mess up. You're supposed to not love yourself sometimes. And hopefully this lifetime, you'll get it. You'll remember. Okay, God, help me get it this time. So when I'm in front of a group, people just like you, I can sit here and love myself and be honest with you and honest with me. Feel stupid, whatever it is that I'm feeling. And just love myself. And love all of you too. And that, my friends, takes a lot of work into that place to be able to accept yourself. It's a process. Thank you.
Thank you. As I thought about this and the comments of the panelists, and go back to Linda and her comment as we closed that first session about fear. We are living in such a media-driven society that's projecting on us that you got to be slim, you got to be young, you got to be this, you got to be that, and some of us are buying into that. A lot of some of us are buying into that. And if you're fat, then so what? There's nothing wrong. And if you're old, there certainly beats the alternative. Dying young? I don't think so. Okay? So it's a fear thing. And the Bible tells us that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. We gotta stop listening to these folks on TV, these talking heads, and start spending time with the God that is speaking every day to us and affirming that, hey, you are good. I like you. But we don't spend time still enough to hear God speaking. He's always speaking. Every day, I hear him every day. We have great conversations. We're on first name basis. I go, hey God, he said, yo Renee. we have that. It's not the man upstairs. It's not Father God Almighty. No, we have a real relationship. You know why? Because I'm not in fear. He is the God of this universe, and he is almighty, and he is all present, but guess what? He is also very personable. You can reach him, you can touch him, but we've been, even in our Christian societies, we are taught that, oh no, you can't do that. That's God. Oh no. And God is saying, come over here, sit down, tell me what's going on. He already knows what's going on, but he just wants to know if you can trust me enough to tell me. Fear. Because it's being projected by media that we have to be a certain way. And our diversity is what God loves. If he didn't, he would have made us all the same. He has the power to do that. So why are we not embracing what God thinks is good? Because we're afraid of differences.
Thank you. Thank you. My heart and my belly are so full from what my ears are taking in, so I don't know where the words will come from. I'm so blessed to be here with all of you, which is part of all of me. My passion right now has to do with the divine feminine. It has to do with that inclusiveness that comes through the feminine process, the process theology. And so I helped build a women's center so we could explore the divine feminine and the inclusiveness, because women carry both boys and girl babies in their belly, and we nurse them from our breasts. And so, you know, we have that inclusiveness, and the feminine part of the brain tends to look at the connections rather than the compare and contrast and whose is bigger. And so, you know, built this women's center to go into that flow, and then sure enough, lately I've been really product oriented about it. You know, I'm getting back into my, gotta make it happen. And so it's just for me, the self-love is to balance those two, that masculine and feminine energy, and to be able to embrace that. And with my studies with Thich Nhat Hanh, it's helping a lot with the inner child work to hold that crying baby, whatever thought patterns coming up for me. Whatever pattern I see that I'm doing that I know better because I've been teaching other people for 25 years not to do these patterns I'm doing. But, you know, it's to hold that pattern as a crying baby, as a child, and to love and nurture it, to not expect it to go away, to not make it go away, to know that it's a piece of the divine. And so there's three things when I really look at what are we doing right now with this center. And I'm teaching a workshop next week with Felicia Beckett on what is love, because I need to keep learning what it is. And we're doing it within a multicultural place because I feel like for self-love to happen, I need to be playing together with you all. And that segregation hurts white people a lot, and it's hurt me in my life. And but the three things for me right now have to do with the depth psychology of doing our own work and holding our own inner children, the being together on the playground, the building community, and the connecting with the earth. And I feel so much more love for myself and the universe when I'm outside or when I'm sitting on the ground, when I'm being with the earth. And so those are the things that are dear to me right now for self-love. And I come from addictions. I come from being a teenage runaway on the streets. I come from a sense of lack in that way. And in my therapy with others, it's all about self-love, and I keep teaching them so I can keep learning it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
So in my second book, I write a lot about how we create self-imposed prisons. We create bondage and servitude in our own lives, that we literally create circumstances in our lives through the thoughts that we carry, the beliefs that we've allowed to be embedded within us, and then we allow ourselves to make the choices that put us in the very same prisons. I think Tut mentioned the words about one of her teachers working with people in prison. And I know from Patricia that this area, the state, is one of the largest in terms of incarcerations in the country. So with my first book, Conversations with the Universe, I talk about how everything outside of us, if it comes into our awareness, is showing up to give us a message about ourselves. So if that message is incarceration being so high, then the question is, where am I imprisoning myself to that degree that I'm not living my life? That I'm not serving to the extent that the divine can flow through, in, as, and through me in the way that I am to walk, breathe, and act upon this planet. I'd love for each one of you to speak to what you feel either about the incarceration issue in this stage or the issue of how we as human beings create that bondage in our lives so that we don't move forward and allow ourselves to be fully in service in the way that we can be. So I'll let you start with that, Patricia.
well, I'm really grateful because as much as I'm a social worker and I think of myself as somewhat aware, I had no idea of this issue a year ago. And now there's all these things happening about the awareness of these issues, and things are changing in our parish, and I'm really excited. But for me, as you started your question, it has to do with the body. It has to do, I don't know where it starts really early on to suppress ourselves. But for me, that coming into freedom has to do with being able to dance, being able to scream passionately, being able to be in our bodies the way they are. And I don't know if that even relates to anything we're talking about here, but it's about rediscovering the body that we knew how to have as an infant. I want to say, can you repeat the question? But that's not it. That's not it. That's one more. Just the prison of the mind. And I do want to say, though, I heard a message strongly this morning because I sat and listened to a speech by Dr. Martin Luther King at this church this morning. And I heard a lot of things. It went way over. It was a long speech. But I heard him say that as much as we need to free ourselves in our minds and our hearts and through our churches, that legislation is equally as important. And that we may not be able to teach people to love or legislate people to love, but we can legislate them not to lynch or hang. And same thing with rape. And so I feel that as much as we need to change within ourselves, I don't want to cop out and not have that change come externally as well with that strength. And I feel really stout-hearted and lion-hearted about that. So thank you. For those in the audience who have taught me that, Dr. Kim, thank you.
Truly, this is a subject that is of great passion to me. First of all, the prison of the mind, because that's where the warfare begins spiritually. It's in the mind. And if we don't free our minds, then we cannot receive the spirituality that God is sharing with us. In Philippians, it tells us, let us take on the mind of Christ. And let's think as he thinks. And if we were to think on a higher level and not a natural level, we always revert to what we're comfortable with. And so a lot of us just continue to get the same old thing because we keep going down the same old path. And we have not allowed our minds to go to a higher level. But secondly, on incarceration, oh my goodness. I did an interview last Saturday on Action News 17 on this subject. But I want you to hear what God has to say on this subject, okay? Because he is the authority, okay? I'm just the vessel. But in Amos, the 5th chapter, the 24th verse, this is what God says. Instead, I want to see a mighty flood of justice, an endless river of righteous living. And so we celebrate Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King life legacy this weekend, and Dr. King said many things. One of the things he said to me on this issue was, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And today, the church, if you are a part of that body, and nobody says you have to be, because everybody has the right to choose where they want to be, and that's healthy, and that's good, and that's okay. But if you are in that body, there's another passage of scripture I want to share with you, coming out of Matthew, the 25th chapter. And here it was talking about when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit upon his glorious throne, and all nations will be gathered in his presence, and he will separate the people as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. Then the king will say to those on his right, come you, who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. Listen, for I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. We have an obligation to deal with this mass incarceration and that's going on in this state. It is not healthy. It is not economically feasible because we are wasting money, warehousing, and putting people in jail who don't belong in jail. Non-violent, first-time offenders. We have more people in jail for marijuana possession than any other place. And the cost of putting those people in jail, our state education budget since 2008 has been cut. Go research this. Since 2008, our state education budget has been cut. You know why it's been cut? Because we have increased our state incarceration budget. Now, wait a minute. We're going to invest in prisons as opposed to schools? And we're going to keep sending these same folk back to Baton Rouge who keep coming up with the same budget? There is a problem. There is a priority issue at the state level, and the citizens of this state need to have their tax dollars go someplace else besides warehousing people who do not need to be in jail.
Amen.
Thank you. I was educated here in New Orleans. And as such, I also became an educator. I taught for over 30 years. And what I learned in our education system, I was told this very early on. I was a young teacher out of school, out of college. And what I understood was that we are living in a tourist society in New Orleans. And we have to have people who have to perform those menial jobs. And the only way they can perform those menial jobs is they aren't educated properly. And so students were deliberately railroaded into careers and behaviors that led to that outcome. So here it is 30 years later, I'm retired this past year. 30 years later, and now I'm understanding that the deeper effect is not so much for menial jobs, but that they be relegated into these cattle prisons, herded into these prisons to operate. At least that's the message I'm getting. And
Could you just use the term school to prison pipeline, please?
school to prison pipeline. Am I offending you? So I.
No, that's the name for what you're talking about.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, school to prison pipeline. Well, I have to come out of the classroom to learn that. Families, children, they need to have those role models. They need to know that you can do anything. And there's enough of us out here saying that they're getting that message. You can do anything. And when we turn to that Christ within us, we do.
Thank you.
Hate following the storyteller.
We'll take seats, we'll take seats.
And she put me in the middle, so I'd have time to really. I can't speak to the incarceration here, so I'll answer it from the perspective of what felt tight in me, what felt constricting in me. My mind is so strong. Now, I keep saying that I grew up in this small southern town with a mother who told me, this is what she said. She said, I am not opinionated, I am right. And so, I thought that she was. And when I went off to school, when I went off to college, I remember I was absolutely gobsmacked that I could think differently than my mother and the people in my family. It wasn't until then that I expanded the way that I viewed religion, that I expanded the way that I view prejudice. Again, because I come from this very small southern town back in the early 50s, and I absolutely love and adore sinking or dropping from my mind into my heart and learning to question every single belief that has ever entered my psyche. And when you first asked the question, the word that came to me was conformity and non-conformity. I am on this rebel road journey. I have a husband, and I've only been married like 2.5 years, and I love him, and he loves me, and he has let me tour around the country with Simi for 11 months, 66 cities. It took me, and I say this a lot when we do our videos, I had to leave my box. I had to just kind of leave my life and my house. And my husband, I didn't leave him, but I just kind of left him, so that I could gain this experience of myself out in the world with different people, different circumstances. So I am a nonconformist, and I am a creative rebel, and yeah, that's what I had to do. Didn't have to do it, I chose to do it, because I love myself.
Thank you, Tuck. For many of you, a lot of people will see us on the road and they'll say to me, and I'm sure they've said to Tuck as well, it just takes courage. It takes courage to do what you're doing, to travel around the country, to not really know how to do this, to be in an RV and go places you've never been. Every step of it takes courage. What I want you to get is the opposite of courage is not fear. It's conformity. It's falling into the same old roles and patterns in life that everyone else has because you think that's the only way. And the greatest thing that I could do for myself, but especially for my children, was to let them know you don't have to be like your mama, you don't have to be like your daddy, you don't have to be like anybody that has ever come before you. You can be you. And this world is wide open for you to be you in whatever way, in whatever place, in whatever capacity your heart asks you to be that. And that's what I also want you all to feel, is if you're not stepping into what it is that you're doing, it's because you're locked in conformity. Simply step out of that, and you have the courage that you need. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So the subject is prisons. There's a strain in many of the world's religions, not all, but that we're all souls imprisoned in our minds and bodies. And that's the nature of the world. That's what we are. And so part of becoming free is connecting with our souls and freeing the mind and the body. We might call, from the time we're children, we start accumulating. We accumulate a personality, and we get societal interjects and parental interjects and self-reflection. And some kid on the playground said something nasty to us, and we take that in, and that becomes our identity. And then we go through life accumulating. Now that we've got a personality, that we've got a script, we're prisoners to that script, and we start accumulating things. Hopefully, at some point in your life, when you've continued to accumulate personality and identity and things, that the light will go off in your head, and you'll say, now it's time to get rid of all this stuff, this junk, these burdens. So when I teach my students, when I'm teaching them about Buddhism, especially Zen, I teach them that the mind and body are like a planet or a sun, that through its gravity, which is its ego, it attracts things to itself. Physical things, beliefs, religious practices, people, relationships. These are all attachments. If you're going to be free from that prison, from that script that's been controlling your life since you were a kid, you have to start letting go of all of that. That's why Jesus said, give away all your possessions and follow me. You cannot be free in your mind if you are grasping onto anything, physical or emotional, people, anything. You have to let go. And when you let go, you can live through your soul, through the universe, through the Tao. You can live in accord with the Tao. So if I might, I brought homework. Somewhere is here. Oh, okay. These were my New Year's resolutions. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If we live by the Spirit, let us also be guided by the Spirit. Those are all from the Apostle Paul. But there's nothing in there that identifies it as any religion at all. These are all universal principles. And it's calling us to live a spiritual life, not a material life. And that is how we free ourselves from prison.
Beautiful, thank you, Kevin.
Can we have recess really quick? So when you posed the question, immediately tightness in the heart chakra, and I had a hard time breathing. And so I was asking myself, what is my connection? I've never been incarcerated. However, because I know in this state who is targeted, and the population of people in prison look like me. So I feel a personal connection in that way of, is it a crime? Because has anyone in here not committed a crime? So no, because that would mean you never go over the speed limit. So do we all deserve to be in jail? Because we broke the law. So, I think from that, like, what are these people doing that they would deserve to live in jail, die in jail, some people? Is it because I'm so good? Because I've walked the line? Is it because my family can maybe pay for a better lawyer than that person's family? So to me, it's systemic. I don't think it's a conversation that can exclude racism. I don't think it's a conversation that can exclude capitalism. it's a culture. It's American culture. I mean, this country was built by people owning people to do work they didn't want to do. The prisons make money for people that don't want to work. They want someone else to work for them. Victoria's Secrets and various other companies that the prisoners make. That people are making billions of dollars. So there's a great reason to have prisons. It makes capitalism work. So when I think about that as an individual and as a community, I have to say, well, how do I benefit from prison incarceration? What is it that I get? What is it that I buy? What's in my house right now that I'm supporting those corporations to continue to support these prisons being built? And somehow there's lobbying and voting and who gets in what office, so that this structure of comfort that we all like, I like comfort, can stay in place, but at what cost? So I appreciate the scriptures. I appreciate the truth that it starts as, being a prison in your mind. But what do you say to a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old? Free your mind. You're God, you're free. That he's trying to make money for maybe a child or his mother or grandmother, and they can't get a job. So that I think is, for me, the challenge is, and I was born in '64, so I love the whole, let's hold hands and rock, but I love it, and I really wish that that's how the world really was. But then I grew up, and I realized that these things are in place on purpose. They're by design, like we're creators, right? We're all creators. Thoughts create. So there are people thinking and creating ways to keep certain structures in place that we all benefit from. And so I guess my personal statement would be to be conscious of how I benefit from being imprisoned in my own mind, meaning maybe putting blinders on and not dealing with things that are right on my street, right in my neighborhood, putting blinders on when I go to Central City, which sometimes I have a hard time going because I see all the homeless people and I feel like, what do I do to change all of your lives, which that isn't it. I think someone mentioned earlier legislation. There's a lot of ways that privilege, we're all privileged in this. We're privileged to be able to say, we do conscious connected breathe. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to even know that the I am is within us. Everyone isn't conscious of that. So even that freedom allows us to not be imprisoned by some antiquated thinking of, just go to church and be a good person. So I think it's so much deeper than scriptures that inspire me every day, and I love the word. But I think it takes me coming out of my safe little world and risking the courage, risking that discomfort of, where'd you go to school? Where'd you grow up? Who am I trying to change your world? I'm here because you're me. I'm not my brother's keeper, I'm my brother, I'm my sister. So I think that kind of energy and that way of community work that you're doing, and getting hands dirty, that will change things. Getting people to vote, educate. There's so many levels other than what I love, which is universal law. I wish that it was that easy. I wish we could all just have one big class. Just one big class in the world, and we chant and we meditate and we all get it, and then we walk away. I wish. I think that's called church. and we're in churches right now. So, I think it's the individual really risking, because some of us are meant to be warriors out on the front line in a different way. There's the people that are like the grandmothers that prayed for everybody.
Yes.
There's some people that's what they need to do. That's going to change incarceration. Just pray for everybody all the time. But then there are the people that are going to be in front of the City Hall with a picket, and they're going to be holding these people accountable. And some of those people are in this room.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Want to just whack that mic a couple times?
I've taken a vow of nonviolence. I'm not sure. What I have learned through my spiritual path is that the best use of my energy in breaking out of prison is breaking through the prison of my own self-deception. Every day, it seems, I discover another lie I've been telling myself. And I don't want to get in here and talk about other people, but you know if you lie to yourself or not, or maybe you don't. That's sad. But I lie to myself all the time, and my daily spiritual practice is to figure out what those lies are. That's how I free myself from prison. That doesn't mean that I think spirituality is all an inside job. I think that I need the spiritual strength that comes from being truly honest with myself in order to be of service to others. Until I can do that, then I need to go back in, because if I take something fake out, then it's not going to sell. The state of incarceration in our country is a subject of, mostly what I feel about it is tremendous grief. I think that it's pointless. I feel a strong sense of kinship with folks who are in prison. And I know how painful that would be to me. Now, at one point I was aspiring to become a Buddhist nun, and some people liken being a nun to being in prison. And I spend a lot of my time learning how to let go of things I don't really need. And so I've let go of many things, because there's nothing more powerful than having nothing to lose. And I want to come back to that every single day. Where is my place where I have nothing to lose? And then I can really start helping people. And some days I can do it, and some days I am not there. And I accept that about myself. But our state of incarceration is something I do not admire. It's deplorable. I don't know what I can do about it personally. I can tell you that 5 years ago I started working in a law firm, which does mostly civil, not criminal. But since I've been there, an insider, my opinion of the state of our legal system has dropped. Not no one really seems to know what's going on, and that's scary. But you know, that's the way it is. So how do I deal with that? First of all, I make sure I'm good with myself, that I'm good with my God as I understand him or her. And when I can be in that place of doubtlessness, then without me having to really think about it at all, I know what to do. I know who to help and how to help them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jim, I'm going to have you put on my sitar. And I want to thank this esteemed panel for all of their wisdom. And I'd like to invite all of you and all of the people that are going to see this on YouTube, it will be aired, to gather a group of people together and go deeper into these discussions. Go deeper into these conversations. Take them further than they have already allowed you to open into. And discover where you're imprisoned. Discover where you need to love yourself more. Discover where you need to allow the ladder of your faith to blend and merge with the ladders of other faiths. The one thing that I know is that we are in love all of the time. We are of love all of the time. We are with love all of the time. We are simply here to act as love all of the time. Are we ready to do that? Because when we do, we will be one. You are not on a journey. You are the journey. You are the journey. This is a spacesuit. You can go ahead, Jim. A spacesuit that you wear. It's got gadgets and whistles. It's here to tell you things about yourself that you might not be aware of. You are not even a spiritual being having a human experience. Because if that were the case, that means that when we leave here, we are just as separate as we were before. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense if we are all one, does it? So there has to be a place, an energy, a field where we really do merge as one. And that would be love. Yeah. I invite you to breathe, to inhale,
in love, to hold the breath of love, to exhale with love, to hold space as love. In love, of love, with love, as love, in love, of love, with love, in love, of love, with love, as love, in love, of love, with love. We are one. We are wide open sky. Each one of us an endless universe to behold. I am you, and you are I. Shall we be one? Shall we be one? Breathe in love, of love, with love, as love. In love, of love, with love, as love. In love, of love, with love. In love, of love, with love, as love. In love, of love, with love. We are calling you. You see, we are each here with unique genius, ready to behold. The thing is, we brought into ideas. Ideas of perfection. Ideas that it has to be right. Ideas that we have to do it a certain way. Ideas that we have to replicate what we see. Ideas that it has to be marketable. That it has to be business. That it has to be of mind. What if it is only about the heart? What if it is about the power of the gut? What if you are genius, waiting to experience and express yourself? What if you are an individuation of the divine, here and experiencing itself? How will you show up? What will you be around? What are you willing to express now? Oh, amen, ashe, namaste. Oh, amen, ashe, namaste. Many languages, many words, many sentiments, all love. We are one, regardless of our color. We are one giant human crayon with a crayon pot. Do we not color with every crayon? Does not every picture seem even more beautiful when it has more color in it? Isn't that why we're all here? In the love, of the love, with the love, as the love, in the love, of the love, with the love. It's time for of the love, with the love, as the love, in the love, of the love, with love. We are calling you. Now is the time to breathe in love, inhale, in love, hold the breath of love, exhale with love, hold the space as love. You want to manifest? It's the only secret you need to know. Inhale in love, the light that you are, the divine light that you are. Hold the breath of the love as you hold the vision of what it is you will have to experience and express yourself. Exhale the love to allow that energy out into the world to create your manifestation. And then all you have to do is hold the space. Use your co-creator as the breath. In the love, of the love, with the love, as the love, with the love, of the love, with the love, as the love. All you have to know is you're a sacred text, walking. You are filled with the divine truth, pearls of wisdom, simply shared. You are a sacred text, filled with story, beautiful stories, some dark, some not, merge them. You are also that sacred text that's made up a bunch of stuff, just like other things. That's what happens too. We all have a lot of stuff made up because we are co-creators. Allow yourself to believe the truth. Allow yourself to know love is wrong. In the love, of the love, with the love, as the love. Amen. Ashe. Om. Namaste. Amen. Ashe. Om. Namaste. Amen. Ashe. Om. Namaste. The one in front of you, the one behind you, the one beside you. It's all God. It's all good. Who can you embrace? Who can you allow in your life? Who can you serve? And who can you see that you have not seen? Oh, amen. Ashe. Namaste. Oh, we are calling you. Ashe. Namaste. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We have time for maybe 4 questions. So if there are any, feel free. And we have time for one announcement before we go. So if there are any questions, I invite you to stand and I will repeat the question so that we have it on the video.
Anyone? Yes.
I'd like to hear what people have to say about scarcity thinking being something that creates fear. In other words, if you accept the fact that there's scarcity, then you're afraid that you're going to be left out. And I think our consumerist economy is what creates that. And whether you have any insight into how we can recognize that the earth can't sustain the standard of living that exists in this country, period. Take 5 Earths to do that. The 1% income for the world population is $33,000. If you make more than $33,000, you are in the 1% of the world population.
So we want to know about the connection between scarcity and fear. Reverend Angela, would you address that one?
Sure. I do know that if all the money in the world was distributed evenly, that within the matter of a year, people would be back to their respective positions on scarcity and abundance. There are people on our planet who have the mindset that they have and that they will always have because they know who they are. It's an inside job. And it's up to us who have, as Thea so lovingly pointed out, we're all the privileged ones here. So the only point I want to make is that we have to teach others how to open up their hearts and their minds and their spirits to receiving what's already been given to them. And I'm sure that Reverend Soule would agree with me. He would agree with me that Christ has already given us all that there is, but we have to open our hearts and receive it. There is no scarcity unless we believe that it is.
Perfect. I'll let you pass it to Tuck as well.
It'll be me. That's powerful.
That was fun.
It's good. And I don't know that I can add because I totally agree with you. I had a mentor say to me one time, it's quite depressing. She told me this. She said, you know what, Tuck, there's no one that needs your help. There's no one that needs you to save them. And the world doesn't need to be saved. And it so deflates me as well. Because I was on such a mission. And what I did at that time was make an absolute commitment and maybe even a declaration to the universe that my job in life was to work on myself, was to, expand, transform, open up, because I'm so clear, because I've been doing it now for, 15 years, and it's so much fun, that if I work on me, that if I work on the way I think, feel, and emote, if I hold myself in that space of self-love and possibility that everything is prosperous and abundant in this world, then it's going to show up out there.
And we've seen that being proven even on this tour.
Yeah.
We have seen that show up. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Any others? Yes, please, Kate.
I was wondering if anybody on the panel is familiar with the work of Karen Armstrong and what your reflections on her ability to express the commonalities in the major religions and her emphasis on the need for compassion. If anybody has anything to say about it.
So the question is about Karen Armstrong, if anyone is familiar, and if they want to express anything. Is there anyone?
I am. We saw a video of her at the International Unitarian Conference giving her Charter on Compassion talk. And I'd certainly encourage any of you, it's a wonderfully well-made, snappy video for the Charter for Compassion. And it's well said and interfaith and beautifully written, and I think she's a world voice. And somehow these two they're mixing now what the Dalai Lama's got going about the Advancement for Compassion and Karen Armstrong and the Charter for Compassion. So if you'll Google either of those organizations, you can sign up for both of them. Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And if you're not familiar with Karen Armstrong,
Yeah,
yes,
very familiar with her work. She's written a lot of books on world religions, on the Enlightenment during the Axial Age, which occurred between about 800 BC and about 200 AD, when all of the major religions were founded. I might add among the voices talking about pluralism in the world and how to be a Christian in a pluralistic world are also John Hick. Pick up anything by John Hick and Marcus Borg, who write about how to be a Christian and still accept the other religions, even how to incorporate the other religions into your Christian beliefs.
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank everyone. Oh, yes, please go ahead. Last question.
If anybody would want to talk about how to take on somebody who's more powerful than you, or aggressor, or like is a corporation, or somebody who may try to keep you down when you're trying to bloom and grow.
So who wants to take on the conversation about the bullies out there?
The first thing that comes to my mind is they can't keep you down unless you let them keep you down. I mean,
When they're controlling your environment, like big oil companies coming into your backyard and just taking your land and things like that.
For me, there's a spiritual solution for every problem. As my biography says, I used to practice law. I used to seek justice in the courts. I don't do that anymore because I do believe there's a spiritual solution to every problem. And I think we might take some lessons, and I'd be happy to hear from some other folks from Taoism, even from Christ himself, who says, bend, let the powerful flow over you. By trying to resist it, you actually attract it. And I say just let it flow over you. And find the freedom in your mind. Sometimes we can't always be free in our environment. We can always be free in our mind.
Just quickly, I would recommend two things. One, community organizing. So I don't know where you live or who you know, but there are some in the audience. So you know that. And the second thing is hinting on what was just shared in terms of, and I can't remember the author of the book, The Hidden Messages of Water. Water can be a drop, it can be an iceberg, it can be a tidal wave, it can be a stream. So really, when to bend, when to stand still. There's a lot of spiritual ways to be a community organizer, but I would definitely recommend community organizing.
Thank you.
I certainly agree with them on community organizing, and then I would go to the power source. Because all power and authority comes from God. And those corporations are only allowed to exist because God allows them to exist. So if we pray without ceasing, and we get before God and get his direction, he will show you how to take them down.
And I'll add one final point to that.
Church again.
Everything that shows up outside of us is going to show up outside of us. Number one, to show us who we are. And rather than separating and saying there's a fight, there's something I have to do here, there's something I have to push away from, if we can sit there instead and say, how can I be in communion and unity with this? And say, okay, this is what's showing up. It doesn't feel right. So what is in there that is in me? Because it wouldn't be there if it wasn't in me in the first place. And find out where that is inside of yourself so that you can find the meeting place of how to approach this group. The second thing is understand that everything that shows up outside of you is to reveal a gift from within you that you are here to share. And oftentimes that is a dormant gift that we are not even aware of. But it is those very obstacles and challenges, those very fights that want to show up in front of us that are there to empower us, that are there to help us find our voice, our power, our compassion, our love, our community organizing, all the different ways that we can experience and express. So rather than looking at everything as an obstacle, a challenge, or a fight, if we can simply start to change our perspective to view everything as an opportunity to love greater, to love bigger, to love in a more expansive way.
I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. It has been an honor and a pleasure to be in your sacred space amongst all of these sacred texts. I invite you to go back and listen to this again. There were so many nuggets of wisdom that were shared. And please share the video with others. Have them have discussions in their communities. That is how, one by one, we really will change this world. Namaste. Have a beautiful day.